Not just like ripped them up and ruined them. I mean, like I found like a foil Charizard and I was like, oh, no, just started ripping into the thing. Welcome, everybody, to the first episode of Rhythm Encounter, the RPGFan music podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Meyerink, and you may know me from such other podcasts as Random Encounter. And with me today is my fine associate.
I'm Derek Heemsbergen. I'm Embryon on the boards, and I am also on Random Encounter and nothing else. But hey, we got to start somewhere, right?
Well, starting on the best podcast ever is the best place to start.
That's true. Yeah, we can only really go up. So, and this one isn't meant to be better, just a compliment.
Yes. So, as you may have guessed by the title, this is our music-centric podcast. It's sort of a spin. We spun it off from our special episode that we did, Music of the Year. And, you know, basically what we'll be doing with each episode is we'll talk about some of the albums we've recently reviewed on RPGFan, and then we'll go into a special topic, as you may have guessed from today's title. Today's special topic is Dreamcast Classics, which doesn't really give us a whole lot to work from, but
everything we can pick is going to be awesome.
Yes. So just a few things I want to say when we got started. I want to give a shout out to the podcast VG Empire, run by Brett Elston. It's the only music podcast I know of, and it's one that I am shamelessly cribbing part of the format for this show from. But it's a fantastic podcast that focuses on all manner of game music instead of just RPGs and adventures like we do. All the guys on there are really funny. They're super knowledgeable, and I promise you'll feel like crazy nostalgia when you're listening to it. So if you like this show and you haven't heard that one, definitely go take a listen to that. Secondly, everything on here, we will include in the show notes a location where you can get this music. You can be bought through iTunes or through CD Japan or PlayAsia, various different places, depending on what it is. In some cases, there'll be promotional releases and things like that. But we'll make sure you know where you can get this stuff and support these musicians. So our most recent review, actually, it's on the front page now. Probably won't be by the time this is posted. But John Tucker reviewed the Mugen Souls soundtrack, which in Japanese is Atoteki Yugi Mugen Souls Atoteki soundtrack. And Atoteki is overwhelming, and Yugi is game. So it's the overwhelming game Mugen Souls overwhelming soundtrack.
I'm already overwhelmed.
Yeah.
I can't even process. But maybe the musical overwhelm us in a good way.
Actually, John T's review, it was very detailed, and he actually said in his game and the soundtrack review that he thought the music was the strongest element of the game. And, I mean, if you're a fan of NIS, the composers Tenpei Sato and Kenji Kaneko. They're pretty much the standbys for that company, and they've done some great work. I'm not especially fond of the Disgaea soundtracks, but there are plenty of people who are. And I actually did like the Mugen Souls soundtrack, so our first track is going to be from Mugen Souls. It's called Dance of the Cherry Blossoms. It's the 12th track on Disc 1. And this track in particular was composed by Kenji Kaneko. So I haven't played Mugen Souls, but I have to say, like, I really did like that track. We were saying during the break, it starts out with this like really traditional like Japanese shamisen type sound, and I really started to think, oh man, it's kind of just going to be the traditional Asian sound. But what'd you think about that?
I thought the same thing, but it sort of subverted itself in the middle because it starts out with that really twangy sound that you have come to expect from anytime you hear traditional Japanese music, you get like the flute and the shamisen, and then you're like, okay, well, I know exactly what this is going to sound like. But in the middle, it gets kind of dark, and there's some heavy drum that sounds cool, and it sort of lets its hair down a little bit, gets kind of chaotic. So I liked it. I imagine it must be some kind of a battle theme, right?
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. It's tough for me to say more about it because I have so little experience with NIS tracks, but I wanted to at least get this one in there because John T said how good it was, and I actually did like the samples. So there's 10 more samples from this album if people want to hear it too. So definitely check out John's review.
So our next track that we've picked is the single for the new Lightning Returns trailer. It's called Crimson Blitz, and Mike Salvato just reviewed this for us. It's the song that was used in the promo trailer that you've probably seen about 100 times by now if you care about the game, which, now that I think about it, everybody might not. I do, but I'm in the minority.
Hey, I like Assassin's Creed. I don't like Assassin's
Yeah,
Creed, but
yeah.
I'd be more likely to play an Assassin's Creed if it starred a Final Fantasy character
That's
and
true.
had coherent writing. But
Well, okay, that's going to be the biggest problem for the game. But anyway, the game aside, the music's pretty cool. It's the recurring motif kind of thing. It has the Blinded by Light theme, and it sort of plays around with it. It's got this little doomsday feel. But let's not talk about it too much. Let's just give it a listen. Up next, we've got Crimson Blitz. That definitely strikes me as a trailer song, for better or worse.
yeah, I think we're thinking the same thing. Like for a 2.5 minute track, a minute of build up is pretty excessive. But on the other hand, it is a trailer. I mean, it's literally the song from the trailer. So and it's 69 cents. So it
Exactly. And it's very Masashi Hamauzu. It sounds like his work from the previous games. So it fits in thematically. And I like the bit at about it's like between a minute 20ish when you get the little syncopated beats where in the trailer it shows the clock spinning and it goes like
is that when the blinded by light theme comes in?
it's right before it. I like that. I like the little offset clock beats, the little notes, and then it goes back into the blinded by light theme. I think anybody who's played Final Fantasy 13 would recognize. Why wouldn't you? recognize Blinded by Light, and I think it's a really good song. I like it a lot. It's one of my favorite Final Fantasy battle themes. It gets stuck in my head for like days every time I hear it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were kind of skeptical before Hamuzu did 13, and when I first heard that in the demo, I was like, all right, well, I'm on board.
Yeah,
Like
it's a really good song. Regardless of what you think about the game, I think most people would agree that it's a pretty catchy song.
the whole soundtrack is
So
great, I think.
it
And
is.
13 too, I actually liked even better. Was it? I can't remember. Was there a lightning or not a lightning returns? A blinded by light mix in 13 too?
There's not, but there's Lightning's theme is like Blinded by Light, but piano.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
there's an arrangement of it in there. So,
Okay. Yeah.
but I think that's a pretty cool song. It doesn't need to be as long as it is, but like Mike said in his review, it's the cost. It costs as much as switching your milk for soy milk at Starbucks, which, you know, God bless Mike for making that joke. I gotta love him, but
Does it really cost 69 cents to get soy milk at Starbucks?
does it? I don't know, like 70. I mean,
How,
I only go to Starbucks like every other day, Stephen. God, why would I know that?
I'm a real man. I drink my coffee black.
I don't want to hear it really. Why don't we talk about another song?
All right, fine. So, the next track we're going with, this actually comes from Kyle's review of Primordia, which is a totally sweet adventure game with some sick atmosphere.
Like the coolest atmosphere ever. It looks so awesome.
Yeah, it's like this dystopian future where you play as this robot, and I haven't had a chance to play the game beyond the demo yet, but the soundtrack was available from Good Old Games as like a not a pre-order bonus, but like if you buy it from Good Old Games, you get all those goodies and stuff. But Kyle reviewed the soundtrack, and it's a lot of it is very atmospheric and kind of dissonant. Not it doesn't defy melody, but I think we went with the title theme track Primordia because I think it does kind of encompass the game really well. So before we say anything else, let's go ahead and listen to it. That track really, like, at first I said it too, and I had to actually look it up to see if it was the same composer. It reminds me of Aquaria. It's not the same composer. This was Nathaniel Chambers. I'm actually not familiar with his work, but if it's all this good, it's probably awesome. But like at first I got that sort of like I guess otherworldly kind of tone from it that reminded me of Aquaria. But then as it got like 2 or 3 minutes in, I'm gonna steal your comment. It had that kind of like 80s synth going on, and it really started to even remind me of Mass Effect. Like it just had this real like thrumming bass and just kind of like it. I don't know. It's hard for me to explain. I can't articulate it, but
Use your words, Steven.
it's otherworldly. All right.
Okay, I think otherworldly is the perfect word to describe it. I also thought that it sounded very like older synthy. It reminded me of Nausicaa a bit. Joe Hisai, she's working Nausicaa. Um,
Kaze no
yeah,
Tani. That's what
Kaze
it
no
is.
Tani no Nausicaa no something or other. So
A
it's
mo-
got
That's a movie
the
where people do wear pants too.
God, I love that.
People have told me they don't wear pants in that movie, but they're
No,
wearing
they do
skin-colored
for
pants.
sure. I love that movie though. But I don't want. I mean, I always want to talk about Nausicaa, but Primordia, the name of the game being Primordia is very apt, I think, because when I hear that, I think of this like dark brown boggy swamp and all these little bugs buzzing around and um, that like sound sort of. It's very like it makes me feel like I'm in a bubble.
That's what I was looking for. Like you feel like there's like something between you and the world. Like I
Yeah,
don't like a barrier, but it
yeah,
makes you want to play the game. It's super evocative.
absolutely. Me too. And I haven't been playing a lot of adventure games lately, so that would be a really good one to ease me back into it. Other than like Virtue's Last Reward, which is amazing.
Yeah, I just finished that, and we're gonna review that music soon too, and we'll talk about that music because Shinji Hosoe is awesome. But
Yeah, we will. All right, so let's move on to the next one. This next track is going to be from Rainbow Moon Melodies, composed by Raphael Dill, and I just reviewed this soundtrack a couple of weeks ago. This is for a strategy RPG that's for PS3, and I believe there's a version of it coming to Vita. And it has this original soundtrack that's got a really cool, like 90s JRPG vibe to it. It's very electronic and very melody driven. And the selection that we picked today is of Hills and Meadows, and I will let you listen to it. It's a bit of a softer piece, and we'll invite comparisons to Chrono Trigger possibly after we come back.
So I reviewed that game, and I actually think the music outpaces the game. The game is solid, but it's a little bit generic, and it's very grindy. But like if you like having a ton of content in your strategy RPG, and just fighting endlessly without a whole lot of like story impetus, there's a lot to be. It's crazy good for the price. But I found myself playing through more just to hear new songs because just I think Rafael Dill's soundtrack is just fantastic for this game. I aggressively battled Derek to pick this track in particular because when I first heard this, I was like, "Hey, I'm in 600 AD again, and Chrono's walking around." I get such a I know it's not an identical sound, but for some reason it just really reminds me of that. And like of PS1 era RPGs in general, I get such a vibe from this soundtrack, almost as if he was intentionally trying to like pay homage to those.
Yeah, it seems like it. That track in particular has got a very woody, like a low flute, mysterious sort of. I get it. Like when you say 600 AD, I totally imagine the world map screen with the fog and everything
Yeah,
with that along to that song. And I would also agree that I have not played this game at all. I've only listened to the music, and I will be diplomatic and say that I think that the art style is not in line with my tastes, which is what I said in the review. Um, but the music is awesome. It's way more awesome than I feel like it has any right to be. But
it has like
that,
that 90s synth palette, like that.
yeah,
So many games had that same sort of sound from the 90s.
yep,
It just I get that vibe from it, and I mean that's undoubtedly what they were going for. But
yeah, it's very cool sounding. And if you guys go and check out the review I did of this, there's I pick samples of the tracks that I like the very most, of course, but I really like the song Crossing Blades. It's a cool song. I picked three battle tracks and two background tracks, kind of. And Crossing Blades and On Guard are two really cool battle tracks, so I would go check that out. We do have the samples up and everything.
yeah, that
And
game.
you can, I
Sorry.
was gonna say, you can get the album directly through East Asia Soft.
Yeah. It's out of print. It's not available on Rafael Dill's Bandcamp page anymore. I think because it's published officially by East Asia Soft. But I was gonna say before that too. I think to its credit, since you spend 90% of your time in battle or getting into battle, the battle themes are pretty catchy and they're pretty. If I remember correctly, they're pretty long loops too. So
Hmm.
if you like this track, it's worth checking out the rest of the whole album because a lot of the music is really fantastic and just super evocative.
It's a good one. All right, so our next pick is a track from East Salsetta no Jukai, also known as East Foliage Ocean and Salsetta, now known as East Memories of Salsetta, thanks
Thank you,
to Xseed.
Xseed.
I love you, Xseed! Thank you.
Well, we kind of synchronized on that.
Yeah,
That was good.
and I even predicted, and I reviewed this soundtrack as well, and I also predicted, I was like, I bet we're gonna get this game this year. I bet we will, and we totally did, or we will. So I'm really excited about that. So this track is probably, if you were to listen to this soundtrack, I don't know if you would necessarily pick this one as your first one to single out, but I picked Harlequin's Temptation. It's a song that is super evocative of Castlevania for me, and I don't want to say much more, but this is presumably a dungeon track, and I'm gonna jam out to this when I play the game, but give it a listen. Harlequin's Temptation by Toshiharu Okajima.
I'm gonna go tempt some Harlequin's BRB.
Go ahead. Me too. Does that not remind you of Castlevania? The gongs. I could imagine myself going through the clock tower in that.
I get kind of like a Mega Man X, PS1, like X4, X5, X6 vibe, or a Sailor Moon vibe.
Yeah. No, really. I was saying during the break, I totally get a Sailor Moon vibe from that. Steven said that's sort of the generic like 90s anime thing, but
not
I
not
did.
not generic because that makes it sound pejorative, but like 80s, 90s, like you know how like J-pop and like animes and games had that sort of sound, and Sound Team JDK has had that sound for the longest time. I think they managed to diversify a lot. Like that doesn't have like the wailing guitars that I would associate with them. It's a little more piano heavy, but
Which is good.
yeah, I mean for me, I like that because I don't have a particularly strong attachment to really any of Falcom's games. I mean, I've enjoyed the ones I've played, but I haven't been like, this is incredible. But I've always thought they had solid music, if a little bit samey, at least to me. I know I get in trouble for saying that, but
Well, it can get a little bit samey, but I'm gonna defend East forever. You know that.
yeah.
You know I will.
Well, I think Celceta sounds really different, and I've been hearing on certain sections of the internet that people actually hate this soundtrack because it doesn't.
Which is so weird.
Well, I think it doesn't include certain tracks that were in the original release. This is Ys 4, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess it doesn't include some really popular tracks, but I mean, What's Here for me is one of my favorite Ys soundtracks I've heard. So, but you know, I'm a heathen non-believer, so I suppose
You are a heathen. You're my little heathen. I agree that it's not their best album, but it's not the best East soundtrack, but it's a good one. And there's some awesome. A lot of that soundtrack sounds super 90s to me. So if you're a fan of like 90s rock, definitely take a listen. 90s rock, it's got a good amount of synth in it too. It's a cool album, and I'm glad that we get to actually play the game.
So that wraps us up for our recent albums kind of section. So today's topic is a topic we were debating for forever and ever. Like, oh, what are we gonna do for the first episode? What do we want to talk about? Do we want to talk about Suikoden battle themes, or which is a good idea? But do we want to talk about the classic?
Our favorite songs from Rhapsody: A Musical Adventure.
I haven't played Rhapsody, but if that game doesn't have fantastic, it's kind of like Eternal Sonata. If you don't have an awesome soundtrack when your game is about music, you're screwed.
Well, it's definitely a musical, so we could sing. Cornet is my name, and I'm a puppeteer too.
There's the intro, and I'm not going to sing.
No.
But so today's topic, Dreamcast classics. So the Dreamcast was awesome, and if you don't agree, well,
You're wrong.
You're just wrong. Even though I as a kid, I was sort of a foolish PS2 fanboy, and like my friends would come over to my house with this Dreamcast and be like, "Hey, try out this game, Skies of Arcadia. Oh, it looks stupid. I'm gonna keep playing Metal Gear. Oh, why are the characters' hands blocks? That's dumb." So
You probably would have stolen my Pokemon cards too, wouldn't you?
actually, when I was a kid, I don't know if I should share this story. It's gonna make me sound like a psycho, but when I was a kid, I actually went to a birthday party and some kid made me mad, so I chewed up a bunch of his Pokemon cards and like ripped them to shreds with my teeth, like. Not just like ripped them up and ruined them. I mean, like I found like a foil Charizard and I was like, oh, no! Just started ripping into the thing.
Yeah, psycho.
I used to have kind of a short fuse. I still do. So obviously, I really feel like you don't start a podcast about Dreamcast music without mentioning, well, any of these games, but Phantasy Star Online. That, I don't know about you, but for everyone I've talked to that enjoyed the game and didn't hate it because it wasn't classic Phantasy Star, which admittedly I was inclined to hate it at first, but I loved it. Phantasy Star Online. It's sort of ushered in the generation of console cooperative online action RPGs. I mean, that's really specific, but for all intents and purposes, this was the first time any of my friends that didn't play PC games were playing a game online on their console, and it was Diablo, which I already loved Diablo, so to take a classic series, and at first it's not, if you look at Phantasy Star Online, it doesn't really have much to do with the old series. Like it's, space sci-fi. There's a lot of homages in the music and, here and there and like the text, but for the most part, it's a separate series entirely. And I mean, at least for me,
It's pretty amazing. I definitely spent quite a bit of time tying up our phone line at home. Phantasy Star Online was my first online game, and man, I used to piss my mom off. Like, she'd be like, "Will you get off that game?" And I'd be like, "No, Mom, I have to level up my mag."
I just remember I was only able to play it online on Dreamcast for like a week because I had like my family had already gotten broadband and the Dreamcast didn't have it had one, but it was like super obscure, and I think Phantasy Star didn't work with it. But so like I couldn't ever play it online except for like a week when I got an illegal NetZero account and like signed up with a fake name. so I could play Phantasy Star Online with my friend. And I just remember I was just enamored with it. And then, I got to level 5 and Dayroli destroyed me over and over and over again. But most of my
Did you
experience.
ever did you ever get your stuff stolen in your week of play? Did anybody ever be like, "Hey, you should drop your items. I'll totally give you like a rare weapon."
No, but I got Knolled.
What do you mean?
You're not familiar with Knoll. All right, well, apparently there was this hack that went on for a long time with the game called Knoll, where it would turn you into a level 1 character called Knoll with all the basic equipment. So I was like I had gotten to like level 16, and so some guy knolled me, and my character turned into Knoll. I was Talus, the level 16, what was I? A Hewn Whirl or something. And I became Talus, the level 1 Knoll.
And then you went on to star in Final Fantasy 13 too?
No, not Noel.
I know, Null, N-U-L-L.
So PSO music, it's awesome.
Ahem.
And the first track we picked is the opening theme because,
Because it's the opening theme.
yeah, I'm going to go out there and say it defined a generation. But seriously, like this, it's the opening theme to PSO. It's awesome. It's a whole new world. Literally, it's called a whole new world.
Innumerable stars won't tell us where to go. It's a long, long ride to the palace in the sun. In hopes and dreams, our ship will cross the sea to the whole new world, shining like a pearl for a whole new world.
Oh, that song! How can you not like Dreamcast? That defined a generation. That song is so cool. Like, I remember going into like Walmarts that had Dreamcast. Did Walmarts have Dreamcast? Whatever store had Dreamcast. Just hearing that song on an endless loop because they would leave it on the title screen, and people would be like, "This game is, what even is this?" And I'm just like, "It's Phantasy Star." Oh, like I was super skeptical because I was like, "Oh, they're bringing it online. It doesn't have the story. What about the Algol system? Like, what is this? What is this Rhaegal crap?" But oh, that song I was literally sold the moment I heard that. I was like, well, all right.
It's very orchestral. And not a lot of games had that at that point, I think. So that might have.
Yeah, I think, you had like synth orchestra stuff, but because prior to that you had basically just PlayStation and N64, it was like, you either had the N64, which, there was some decent music on there. I didn't particularly love the N64, but it was, cartridge-based music, and you had those sort of limitations. When when PS1 you had, synth libraries still and that sort of thing. And I think here, you got, full recorded, not that had been unprecedented, but.
Yeah, it's a cool song. It reminds me of PSO. I don't know what else to say.
That's what it's supposed to do. That's why I picked it.
Exactly.
That's why I picked our next song. The track title is Cry for Idol of the Holy by Hideki Kobayashi. Anyone that's played PSO for any extended amount of time will recognize this. This is the Dark Falls 2 battle theme. the one that starts only when you can't get to this fight in normal, if I recall. Yeah, you have to be in at least hard or ultimate or very hard. Yeah, you have to. And this is like the super final boss track, and I can picture my little goofy character kind of waddling around that weird like slow accelerate run that they had going on in that game where you'd start walking and then your character would track something and slow down and then you'd start walking fast again. And just I remember running around in that big giant circle of light hoping I didn't get stabbed to death, and usually getting stabbed to death. So this is Cry for Idola the Holy.
It's another boss song with chorus.
Yeah, but
Again.
it's awesome. I mean, it's super synthy, but it doesn't matter. That song is the Dark Falls fight. I remember just playing that game in co-op with my brothers, and we would be running around. We were like 10 levels too low, and every time he did that move where like he like ties the cord to you, and like if you hit him, you die. It would pretty much mean every single time my youngest brother would get killed, and then I'd have to go revive him, and I'd get killed, and then that was the end of the party. But man, that oh, it's so cool.
It is really cool. I'm just ragging on it. I'm just poking fun. It is a really cool song, and I also, when I hear that song, I think of the when you finally win and you get like the field of flowers.
Oh yeah, and like Red Ring Rico comes flying out of Dark Falls' body for some reason. I don't remember.
Yeah, and you're like, oh, so that's Red Ring Rico.
Yeah, you're like, I've been ignoring every single one of these little story things, but yeah, all right, I guess I saved her, so that the principal's going to be happy now.
Yeah, it's a cool song. I like it.
He was the principal, right? The dude who sent you on your little adventure to go destroy countless indigenous citizens of the planet?
Yeah, what a nice guy.
Yeah, well, they stole his daughter. So it's like the exact same story as Final Fight.
Yeah, I guess.
In space. Fantastic.
Final Fight in Space. That is PSO.
So, music. Derek.
The next song, speaking of the principal, where does that principal live? On Pioneer 2. So nobody could have played PSO and not heard Pioneer 2. It is the song that plays when you're in the ship, the Pioneer 2. And I have spent so many nights just hanging out in Pioneer 2, like chatting with friends and
Symbol chatting with people.
Yep.
Like
the
faces. Or
little
like
noises.
You would find those people online that spent like 6 hours making creepy faces, or like people with like bodily parts, that sort of thing.
Of course, yeah. Well, anytime you're given a creative medium, what do? You find a way to make a penis out of it.
Yep.
So the song Pioneer 2 everybody's heard, but it's so good. We have to listen to it again.
Yeah, that song is just literally like you hear that and I'm like, well, all right. I imagine like you know how everybody kind of stood still and like head bobbed in that game, like when you were standing.
Yeah.
It's like, well, they weren't sing. They were doing the Pioneer 2 song, but I killed this.
Yeah, they sure were. I just think of being scammed. I guess I was a gullible kid.
See, it's gonna make me sound horrible, but my friends and I were the people on Diablo who were scamming people, and
Oh, I'm sure.
I,
Well, you ate Pokemon cards, so is it surprising?
we were. I wasn't very nice, man.
Hey.
I never scammed anyone on PSO though. I gotten old, but I never scammed anyone. Like, well, I mean, I didn't really have any. I was with my brother, so I mean, if I scammed anybody, it was my younger brother. I was like, hey, that disc sucks. You should give it to me. Oh, okay. What will you give me? Saber.
Yeah, this is a special saber. See how it has no stars? That means it's
And
so good, it's not good.
it's white. It's not green. So this one is. It's better
It's
than the average
pure.
saber. Yeah. Yeah. I was the.
PSO was a good game.
Yeah. PSO was, but for as much as I love PSO, our next game on my top 10 of the last decade on RPGFan, I put it at number 9. I'm starting to think I should have put it at like number 4, but it's Skies of Arcadia. No discussion of Dreamcast or even GameCube for that matter, even though that version wasn't as good, is complete without talking about Skies of Arcadia. This game, I'm gonna go into long anecdote mode. So that friend who I mentioned, where I was like talking crap about the Dreamcast and I was playing Metal Gear 2, he left Skies of Arcadia at my house for like 4 months. He's like, "You should go play that game. Play that game." I'm like, "Yeah, all right." I played the first dungeon. This game is dumb. Put it down. And then I guess I just decided one day in like November before Christmas that I was gonna play it, and I got through the first dungeon. I got through like the whole first section and was like, "Oh my god, Sky people, this is amazing!" And then I got to the sewer dungeon. We had to go rescue everybody, and I'd come up out of the sewer, and then the game crashed.
Boo.
Every time the music would just lock up and it would crash, and there was like no scratch on the disc anywhere, and I couldn't figure it out for the life of me. And my friend was like, "Well, it worked for me," and I, I was like super upset because I had finally decided I loved the game, and then it was like, "Yeah, well, you didn't play me in time, so you're done." That Christmas, I got totally on a lark. My mom bought me, Santa Claus bought me a disc repair kit. So I immediately opened that and I went, and ran upstairs, resurfaced the disc, put it in, it worked, and then I literally spent 3 days straight. I had to have put like 60 hours on the game in 3 days. Is that possible? Well, I put
Yeah.
I didn't sleep much. I beat the game and I was like, this is literally like the bestest thing ever. It's like, what do you think?
I agree. I think Skies of Arcadia is amazing, and Skies of Arcadia perfectly encapsulates like adventure, that open world, amazing. I know it's not it's not like a GTA clone, but when you first get into an airship in that game, you're like, holy crap, I could
Like,
go anywhere, and
I
then you
can
die
search for treasure.
because everything kills you if you go too far. But you're like, holy crap, biggest world ever. And yeah, I love floating islands. Anytime there's a game with floating islands, I'm like, sold, give it to me, I want it. And then that doesn't always work out, I guess. But
Arch and Alex
um,
did that, didn't it? Didn't Arch and Alex?
well, it had like a tower.
Oh,
I guess it had like floating land masses and stuff. But floating islands are awesome, and Skies of Arcadia had a lot of those. And the song that Steven is about to introduce is from one of the best dungeons.
yeah. So I apologize. This is a late game dungeon, so don't listen if you don't want to hear the title. But this is from the Great Silver Shrine. It's the shrine you go to on the moon near the end of the game that has you like running up the sides of walls. It's just the music is perfect for this dungeon because the moment you hook around and start running up this like shining, flashy wall, I'm like, wow, this is the perfect music for this. It's just this mind-bending, super just that's what I think this game got right too. Is I tend to not like whimsy. We make fun of me for this all the time. I don't like Dragon Quest. I don't like. I'm not a big fan of like NIS games or like Reciteer. Like I don't like that super fluffy whimsy sort of thing. But this game was like lighthearted but tied in seriousness with it. So it made like the happy peppy adventure thing all the better because it's like, well, you were adventuring, but now the world's in danger. But yeah, so without further ado, I promised I wouldn't say that again, but it's the Great Silver Shrine, and this one's by Tatsuyuki Maeda. So enjoy. Oh, that song. It's just like right when you get to that, like it's like like it's just you first walk into the dungeon and you're walking around and then all of a sudden right when it hits that part where it's like you start running up the freaking walls and just and like I feel like everybody who played that game must have had a similar experience to me. Like I ran up the wall and I went, oh, this is the best game ever made. Like you.
It's an awesome song. It reminds me of Illusion of Gaia. Again, I said this in the last music podcast, but apparently that's how I describe things. Like, it's like derp. It sounds like Illusion of Gaia. I forget what it's called, but it's got that like rat-a-tat-tat drum kind of thing, like the in some parts. And
Yeah.
it's that combined with the synthiness reminds me of Illusion of Gaia. It's to me, it evokes images of like space. You said it's like the moon dungeon, right? So space and stuff. I don't remember. I told Steven I remember fighting the final boss of Skies of Arcadia, but I don't remember this dungeon, and I don't remember if I ever beat it or not. Shame, I know.
Yeah.
But that's a cool song. I'm glad that you reminded me of it because I didn't remember it.
And this is making me want to go replay Skies of Arcadia.
Everything makes you want to replay Skies of Arcadia.
Well, I haven't played it's one of the rare games. It's like my favorite game ever that I haven't replayed. Like my three favorite games of the last decade, like Skies of Arcadia, Shadow Hearts, and Digital Devil Saga. I never replayed any of those. Which is
Maybe it's because you want to keep the memory pristine.
no, I should not. I should not keep it pristine. I should play it again. But then again, I remembered that
Bust it open.
I
Get
have
back
that
into it.
But yeah, like, and it was so cool in this song too, because you get like, as you're running on the floor, it makes this kind of tinkling sound. So it's like ding, 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 ding. So you have that like underscoring the song. It was so, it's just cool. I'm very descriptive with my boos and oohs.
It made me go, huh.
Yeah. So I think you picked the next track. It wasn't the one I would have picked, but it's a good selection, so I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I wanted something that encapsulated the adventuriness, because that's a word. The adventurous feeling you get when you play Skies of Arcadia, which is being on the world map mostly. So I picked one of the world map themes. This is the one when you're flying the Little Jack Drachma ship. And I like it because it is whimsical, as much as Steven hates that word. It's got the very light flutiness, and I feel like when I hear it, there's like clouds parting and sun, and it's time to fly off on a new adventure. I
I,
really like this one a lot. So.
I don't think it's like whimsical, yeah, but I don't think it has that like fluffy kind of like meaningless sound to it.
Like the annoying fluffy
Like
thing.
there's still some weight to it. It's like, yeah, you're flying around, you're on an adventure, but this is like, you got stuff to do. It's not like, like selling items in my shop and then, oh golly gee, mid boss
Hey,
showed up.
why are you gonna hate on Reciteer? Come on.
I went into a Disgaea rant there.
Yeah, I noticed
I
that.
know people love those games, and I like
I
it.
don't want to talk about it. I want to talk about how awesome this is, the Little Jack world map theme.
Yes, not as good as the Delphinus theme, but it's awesome.
Stop it. Just enjoy.
All right.
Is that not adventure distilled?
It is.
It's so happy, but it's also, like you said, it's got some weight to it.
Yeah, like
And
you're out on this dramatic adventure, but there's also, it's dramatic. It's not just
right, it's like the world is open before you, the good and the bad.
yeah. It One
Mostly
of the
good.
best parts about that game is that the Delphinus track does this too, and the Sky Pirate ship does this. Whenever it's integrated into the track, and you probably heard it. There's the Nasrad, Ixataka, and Valua like instrumentation gets worked into it. So like when you're flying past Ixataka, you can hear like drums in the song, like tribal sounding drums. So it's like you're flying past this nation, and you can hear people like playing their native music, like wailing on the drums, and then you get this real dramatic like Empire type music when you're near Valua. Like that when you're in those actual towns, those instruments are used. So late game, the Delphinus track is longer because you can go to every nation with it. So you'll have the main Delphinus theme when you're out in the world, but then when you fly close to a nation, it like changes to be like that nation. It's just I don't think I've ever played. I'm trying to think of another JRPG that's ever done that, where your world map song changes depending on
Yeah,
what nation
that
you're. It's just
the dynamic changing. I love it, and it adds so much to the atmosphere. And
yeah,
another game that does that is it's not a JRPG, but Nier does that a little bit.
yeah. Actually, you're right. You're right. Well, I would call that a JRPG.
Like with the singing and all that. But
Everything near.
it's such a cool idea, and it's so underutilized. I guess it probably might get boring if every game did it. Well, could it really? I mean,
The thing is, it makes everything feel really cohesive. Like that was one of the things with Skies of Arcadia is you didn't feel like you were just traveling through like a list of locations. It really felt like you were exploring a world. Like there were like the treasures and stuff, and then there was like you knew the moment that game started, you were like, "There's something beneath the clouds, and I want to know what it is."
yeah.
And maybe they followed through with that. I don't want to spoil anything. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. Who knows? But it made the world feel so cohesive. It was one of the many ways it felt cohesive. Because with the world map with it's all air, it could get really generic after a while. Because like, oh, there's another rocky island. Here we go.
But it didn't, and that's why Skies of Arcadia is awesome.
Among many many reasons. If you haven't played Skies of Arcadia, you should. This was the second soundtrack I ever bought. The first one I bought was Chrono Cross, and it's brilliant. So the other big RPG that you can hardly talk about Dreamcast without mentioning is Grandia 2. This was immediately after I finished Skies of Arcadia. I literally bought a Dreamcast just to play Skies of Arcadia, my broken Skies of Arcadia disc. So immediately after, I go, gosh, I want to play another RPG on Dreamcast. And I was like, oh, my options are Time Stalkers and...
Evolution and Elemental Gimmick Gear.
Well, at the time, though, I thought Evolution was cool because I was like, oh, I have a Dreamcast. I want to play Dreamcast games. And I played Evolution. This is pretty cool. And the more I played it, I was like, well, this isn't quite as cool as I thought. I mean, I don't know. I know a lot of people liked it, but
It was the same for me. It was the first Dreamcast RPG, so you played it and you're like, oh my god, next gen. Whoa, look at those graphics.
And then Skies of Arcadia comes out. You're like, wait, what? But Grandia 2 was an excellent game. I didn't like it quite as much as Skies of Arcadia. I remember like the bad guy, and I remember Ryudo was the jerk. He was voiced by Cam Clark, so I was like, oh, cool, Liquid Snake is in this game. But I don't associate quite as fond memories with that game as I do with Skies of Arcadia. However, the music by Noriyuki Iwadare, who's Lunar, he's a legend, is awesome, and it has some of my favorite battle themes. I think. I don't know if I want to say I like it better than Skies of Arcadia in terms of battle themes, but they're awesome battle themes. And the first track I picked from it is called Purification of Darkness, Battle with the Parts, which is an obtuse title, but it's an awesome song.
And it makes sense within the context of the game.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I mean, if you've played the game, you're going to recognize the track immediately because like right as this opening part, it's like dun 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 dun, like your characters are running into the battle. So it's very like I have very fond memories tied into this song. But here we go, Purification of Darkness.
That theme is so high stakes. It's like, don't screw up. You're gonna get hit with a demonic eye laser.
It's been so long. I barely remember like any actual like events in the game. I just remember like the girl and the twist with the girl, and I remember the bad guy, and I remember the super evil Pope monster man.
So you remember every Japanese RPG.
Yeah, basically. And I remember
I'm
my
kidding. I
my
love
friend
Japanese RPG.
my friend who totally hates JRPGs, but for some reason I got him to play this and he liked it.
Oh,
Back when we
Rob?
were kids. No, not Rob. Um, we
This is too much.
Yes. So my friend that hates JRPGs played it, and I just remember we have this quote, and to this day, he doesn't even remember the game. He just remembers, chill out! Ice prison! And
I
it's
I have
all
so many
remember.
of those.
All I remember. That, you know what that song does too, that I not a lot of songs do because they loop. That song has an end. Like, it goes back to the thing, it's like dun 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 dun, bom bom, and then it ends. And then, I don't know. That's, seems like a random thing to point out, but it's cool.
I'm sorry, but I have to bring up the other ones because like I have friends also that we have jokes about like cheesy RPG lines that we just say to troll each other every now and then. So I actually have one from each Grandia game. The first one is Grandia 1, Fina's Fire. It's, oh, flame burn him. And
Wow.
then
Voice
I,
acting.
I guess I don't know that it's so good, right? I don't know that I have one from 2, but from 3 it was Alfina, her like, oh God, what was it? It was like, oh, divine comet, illuminate the darkness.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah.
All I remember about 3 is that it wasn't as good, and I felt like it was trying to jack something from Skies of Arcadia. Were there Sky Islands in that one?
No, but Grandia 3 like had such a cool beginning and then it just sort of turned into your typical story of saving the world. It was so cool though, like in the beginning, when you have Yuki's mom in the party. Like how awesome is that? How many parents go on the adventure with you? And then she ends up leaving, not a spoiler, I guess.
Well,
She ends
actually,
up leaving and then the game just sort of gets like progressively more derivative. And shout out to Kim Wallace who did an awesome article on Game Informer. She used to write for us, so we love her. Well, she's awesome anyway, but she works for Game Informer now, and she did an article about the moment when Yuki's mom leaves the party in Grandia 3 that I thought was really cool. So if for some reason you can dig that article up on Game Informer's website, take a look at that. It's a cool game.
yeah, I remember getting to that part. That my memories of that game were vague, but I remember it being pretty cool.
But we're supposed to be talking about music, aren't we?
Well, no, actually, if we're going to talk about quotes, I have to at least mention that in Arc the Lad Twilight of the Spirits, the main character said, taste the wind blade of urine. He didn't say, he was supposed to be saying fury, but he was like, taste the wind blade of urine. Maybe
It's like when you pee in a typhoon or something.
maybe I misheard it, but I don't know. So yeah, that Battle of the Parts, cool song. Derek, I think you picked something that, I don't know, maybe is a little more iconic, because I guess not everybody would have beaten the game.
Yeah,
Did you pick?
I know that. Well, we're trying to introduce people to stuff they may not have heard or stuff that they have heard and haven't, it's been a while, so they're like, oh, cool, I remember that. Basically, we just want to spread the music love. But this track is just the very first battle theme for Grandia 2, just called Fight version 1. I'm sure you've heard it if you've played Grandia, and I'm sure it gets stuck in your head all the time because it gets stuck in mine. But it's a really fun, high-energy rock track. So take a listen. Fight version 1 by Noriyuki Iwadare. So rocking.
Yeah, I was telling Derek while we were listening to it. I actually forgot that part at the end is just super cool when it's just the guitar and it's like. I'm not gonna keep doing that, but
Yep, no, recreate the entire song. Go ahead. I'll wait.
No, that'll come for a special blooper episode when we get to 50.
Oh, okay. Well, we already have some material for that.
Yeah, I'll probably forget that we have it though. But yeah, it's the Grandia battle theme. It's pretty cool.
So with that said, we're done discussing our music tracks for now, for this topic at least. So the next segment we're going to have is we're going to talk about some news items and things of note. So first, I just wanted to touch on some of the releases that we've got coming up in February. The first one that's coming up it's an Artanelico box called Krut Hymneth, The Songs That Conversed with the Gods, Artanelico Hymnos Concert Complete Box.
And in case the name didn't give it away, you can go to the VGMDB listing and look at the list of arrangers. That's like 60 people or something.
It's absurd.
I'm not as familiar with Artanelico's music, although I'm going to try to get us a copy of this box to listen to.
Yeah.
But it's extensive.
If you've ever wanted all of the Artanelico music at once, there you go.
Yeah, all of the music. Well, actually, no. This isn't. It's not the soundtracks. I think it's actually from a live concert. It's a recording from a live concert.
Oh, okay. Well, either way, it's a lot. And it's going to be out by the time that this podcast comes out. So we've got that, and we've got the Shining Arc Tenchi no Fan Disc, which is a disc that you get if you pre-order the upcoming PSP game Shining Arc in Japan.
Which looks like Valkyria Chronicles.
It does. It's like Valkyria Chronicles, and Silicon Era said it's like that mixed with FF10, which it does look like because it has a turn order kind of system.
So in other words, it's the most
really good
ever designed.
And we're never going to get it.
We're not going to get it.
Get it.
But if you pre-order it in Japan and can't play it, you can at least get the fan disc, which is the full soundtrack by Hiroki Kikuta.
Is the
Secret of Mana.
Lovely Secret of Mana composer. Yep. So that's exciting if you live in Japan. And then finally, there's an Is Zanmai album coming out on February 28th, also in Japan. I think it goes without saying most of this stuff is in Japan if it's for a Japanese game.
I mean, you can still buy it though.
Yeah.
Like on Play Asia or on CD Japan. And the Zanmai albums are actually a series of like remix albums from various Falcom series. Like they have Ys Boss Zanmai, which we'll have a review coming of probably by the time this is up. And then you have like, I think there's Sora no Kiseki Zanmai coming later in the year.
Out.
Yeah, so they're like Falcom JDK arrangements because they love to arrange and iterate on their music, and they do a good job with it. So.
Yep. So there's that to look forward to. And aside from those three main releases, got a couple other items of note. There is on the Hyperdimension Neptunia Victory soundtrack. That's the third Neptunia game, even though V. It was initially called like Hyperdimension Neptunia V, which made everybody confused because there were like 5. How are there 5 already? But for that soundtrack, there's actually going to be music on it from Earthbound Papas, which is the band headed by Nobuo Uematsu, and I believe his protege. I forget his protege's name. I don't remember if he's in it or not.
It's Tsutomu Narita and one of my favorite composers ever, Yoshitaka Hirota, the Shadow Hearts fame. It's like their band. They have an album that is actually also going to have a review at RPGFan soon, but it's a great album full of like Square music and just some original stuff that they've done. Which I thought it was interesting that they're doing Victory because Kenji Kaneko and Tenpei Sato, I think, did the first 2 Neptune games, which we've also reviewed. So be sure to check out their soundtracks.
Yeah, so if anything, at least I'll listen to the music since I don't want to play another Neptunia game.
I don't either, but I'll definitely be listening to it.
Yeah.
They hook me.
Yep. And next up on the Nintendo Direct blowout that we touched on the last Random Encounter episode, you may have seen the teaser for the new Project X game coming out for Wii U, and we found out that the soundtrack for that is going to be composed by Hiroyuki Sawano, who is a Japanese composer that's worked on various TV and anime series in Japan.
And I am literally not familiar with anything he's done, but I just thought it was worth noting because it's not going to be Ace Plus, Yoko Shimomura, and
right,
the other person who did Xenoblade. I reviewed that soundtrack a long time ago.
Yeah, and it's also interesting because they mentioned the composer's name in that very first teaser trailer, so clearly they're probably banking some of the success of the game on the good music. So I have high hopes. I hope it's gonna be good.
Everything about that game has me with high hopes, so I'm
Yeah, me
hoping it's
too.
gonna work out.
Well, you know how I feel about Xenoblade. Love forever,
I
and I'll
actually
probably have that too.
I just started playing it again actually, so I'm gonna
Keep
finish it.
going.
It every time I go back to it, I'm like, this game has the best battle theme.
Yeah, it really does.
You hear it, and you're like, oh no, go like because the song is like 4 minutes long, but your battles always last like 30 seconds. So it's like, well, I didn't get to the awesome part or the
Yeah,
awesomer part.
I guess you could do a worse job and listen to it more, or you could just listen to the soundtrack, which you have because you reviewed it.
Yeah,
So, and then we've also got a full album release coming for Nino Kuni in March, which is interesting because the up until now there does not exist a full album for Nino Kuni, and this one is going to be published by YO Records. I believe it's YO or YO Records, and it's going to include not only the DS soundtrack but the PS3 soundtrack as well, plus unreleased tracks. And the soundtrack is one of the best things about Nino Kuni, so that's worth being excited about too. And finally, there's going to be a full album release for Fire Emblem Awakening, which is an awesome game that everybody's playing right now for good reason. The soundtrack is going to be 4 discs, which should tell you how much music there is in that game. And that is going to be released on March 27th. And I definitely want to hear that. And I'm sure we'll have a review of that on the site as well.
absolutely, we will. I think the game was called Fire Emblem Kakse in
Yeah,
Japanese, and
it
that's
was.
that's what the album is called too. And I don't think there's any word yet if it's going to get a local domestic release. I hope it does, but at the very least, I'd like to see it on iTunes. But I suppose we would have to look more into that. But I digress. Is that what we've got for news today, Derek?
That is it. That's it for news.
I mean,
Yep.
our news that's technically old news, but still items of interest. Well, so because I don't want anybody who loves Dreamcast to get mad at me, we have one last track we're going to close out with, and it's from a series that is not an RPG, but it's an adventure game, and it's sort of a big deal. It's called Shenmue, and we'll never know how it ends because unless you like cell
'Cause
phone games.
we're going to spend the rest of our lives looking for those sailors.
Wasn't he looking for a mirror though? I don't remember. I didn't play the second one.
Yeah, but I mean,
Did he find the mirror?
sailors, man. Did he? I don't know.
My only memories of Shenmue are driving a forklift around. Like I literally remember nothing about that game except that I won a Sonic thing in an arcade machine, and
Yeah,
I drove a forklift a
my
lot.
memories are feeding kittens, playing gashapon machines, and playing arcade games like Space Harrier. I think that was the first time I played Space Harrier was in Shenmue, and I was like, "What's this? Oh my God!" And then I was like, "Oh, I'm that stupid kid."
My uncle worked in an arcade growing up that had like the
What?
classic Space Harrier machine. So if I ever wanted to play a game, he would just open it up and like give me 50 credits. So
Oh,
I
that's
beat
awesome.
I beat Space Harrier as a wee lad.
That's so cool.
Mostly through blunt force. I was terrible at it, so I just kept dying and having him adding more credits. But whatever.
Yeah.
So our final track is, I would consider it the main theme of Shenmue. It's Shenmue Sedge Tree. It's by Takenobu Mitsuyoshi, and we hope you enjoy it as much as you enjoy not playing the third Shenmue that I don't
Wow.
think is ever going to get
So they're not
released.
going to enjoy this at all.
Yeah, well, that didn't make any sense, but you should enjoy this track.
We hope
because
you
it's
like the
awesome.
music.
But also before we go, if you enjoyed the show, please let us know. If you didn't enjoy it, just keep your mouth shut. No, but seriously, if you have suggestions for ways we can improve, ideas for topics for the second half of the shows, like something you'd really like to hear, if you want me to stop going over how much I really really love the games we're talking about, I guess I
If
could
you
do that.
if you
Probably.
ever wanted to know what a foil Charizard tastes like, any of those things,
It tastes
you
like
could email us.
sad.
It tastes like being a bratty kid.
But yeah, you
No,
can email me directly at stephenm@rpgfan.com or derek@rpgfan.com. We don't have a special address set up for this show yet, but you could theoretically email podcast@rpgfan.com as well. But yeah, so please send us your comments, concerns, interests. We should have this available on iTunes as well, so you can subscribe and review us there and give us 5 stars out of 5. That's it. Thanks for listening, and taking us out is Sedge Tree from Shenmue.